The headline blazed across social media, Filipino accents mocked, but their words ignite the room. It was the kind of story that made you stop scrolling. The world watched as a group of Filipino students prepared to face an international debate. Cameras flashed, the crowd buzzed with expectation, and a little cruelty. The atmosphere felt electric and cold. Whispers floated through the hall, some hidden behind hands, others carried openly from team to team. Did you hear their accents? Someone giggled, not even bothering to lower their voice. For the Filipino team, every snicker felt heavier than a stone. But this was more than just a debate. It was a battle for dignity. Every Filipino in the room felt it, the sting of being judged before uttering a word. The team stood together, shoulders squared. Heartbeats raced, but eyes stayed bright with something unbreakable. What happened next would change more than the outcome of a single debate. It would change minds, open hearts, and flip the script on what truly matters when you raise your voice. Before the event, the Filipino team gathered outside the grand auditorium, their nerves buzzing beneath the surface. The building loomed above them, a symbol of the challenge ahead. They tried to laugh off the nerves, sharing jokes and stories to lighten the mood, but their laughter was tinged with anxiety. The air was thick with a different kind of pressure, one that went beyond the usual pre-competition jitters. Some students from rival teams passed by, whispering in accented English. Let's hope they speak slow enough for us to understand. Every word stung, echoing old stereotypes. The Filipino students had grown up hearing that their accent was wrong, that their voices didn't quite fit the mold. The world seemed to judge them by how their English sounded, not by what they had to say. It was as if their ideas were always filtered through the lens of their accent. In that moment, all those old insecurities came rushing back, memories of being corrected, mocked, or dismissed. Even the judges exchanged glances when the team's names were announced, their faces betraying a flicker of doubt. It was subtle, but it was there. A raised eyebrow, a tight smile, a silent question hanging in the air. It was the kind of look that said, let's see if they can keep up, as if their presence alone was unexpected. The Filipino team felt the weight of a nation's expectations, and the burden of every past insult, every time they'd been told they weren't enough. Despite the sting, the team made a silent decision. They exchanged glances, finding strength in each other's eyes. They would not let the world define their worth by the curve of their words or the sound of their voices. They would let their hearts and minds do the talking, determined to prove that their ideas mattered, no matter the accent. Meet the team from Manila, 3 students, each with their own unique dreams, backgrounds, and personalities, but united by one shared mission, to make their voices heard on a stage far from home. Miguel was the oldest, a quiet thinker who found comfort in the pages of history books. He often spent hours in the library letting stories of the past guide his thoughts. Though he sometimes worried that his accent might trip him up in front of a crowd, his mind was sharp as lightning, and his insights always cut straight to the heart of any argument. Beside him stood Sophia, whose radiant smile could light up even the most intimidating room. Yet, behind her note cards, her hands trembled with nerves. For years, she'd been told to hide her accent, to make her voice sound more neutral. But Sophia's stories burned with truth and authenticity, and she was learning to let her real voice shine through. Then there was Arnold, the youngest but perhaps the fiercest of them all. He cracked jokes to mask his nerves, always trying to keep the mood light. But beneath his laughter he carried stories in his heart, stories of family, hardship, and hope that fueled his determination to speak up and be heard. Each of them had felt invisible at times, overlooked or even judged for speaking English differently. They knew what it was like to be underestimated. But together they formed an unbreakable bond, supporting each other through every challenge and setback. Night after night they practiced late into the evening, perfecting their arguments, challenging each other's ideas, and pushing themselves to grow. The classroom lights burned long after others had gone home as they debated, laughed, and sometimes even disagreed, always striving to be better. Miguel would remind the team, "It's not about sounding perfect, it's about what we know, what we believe, and who we are." His words became their anchor. Sophia nodded, her confidence growing with every rehearsal, her voice becoming steadier and stronger as she realized the power in her own story. Arnold would lean in and whisper, "Let's give them something to remember," his eyes shining with determination and hope. Behind their nervous smiles was a quiet strength, forged from shared struggles and dreams. They didn't just want to win a trophy, they wanted to change how people listened to voices like theirs, and to show that courage can sound like many different accents. The debate hall was grand, with flags from every nation hanging from the ceiling, each one representing a different story, a different hope. The air was thick with expectation, as if the very walls were waiting to witness history unfold. Judges sat at a long table, stern and silent, their faces unreadable. They were the gatekeepers of fairness, their pens poised to record every word, every argument, every slip. Spotlights swept over the teams, casting long shadows and highlighting the nervous energy on stage. Each team stood tall, trying to mask their anxiety with practiced confidence. The topic for the night was serious. Should climate change policies prioritize economic growth or environmental justice? It was a question that demanded not just intellect, but empathy and vision. The room buzzed with anticipation. Conversations in different languages filled the air as students, teachers, and guests speculated about which team would rise to the challenge. As the Filipino team stepped onto the stage, a hush fell. All eyes turned to them, the underdogs in a sea of seasoned competitors. Their opponents from a prestigious European university smirked, whispering just loud enough, "This should be easy." The air was thick with both rivalry and doubt. The first Filipino debater looked out at the audience, saw the sea of strangers and felt every eye on their lips, not their hearts. The rules were strict, and the pressure immense. Arguments had to be logical, sources cited, and time kept to the second. There was no room for error, no space for nerves. The Filipino team knew they faced not just their opponents, but a hidden battle against prejudice. They carried the weight of expectations, both spoken and unspoken. Every stumble would be magnified, every hesitation noted by the judges and the crowd alike. Every mistake, a reason for mockery. The whispers and quiet laughter from the audience were reminders of the uphill battle they faced. But as the debate began, the Filipino team breathed deep, steadying themselves. They drew strength from each other, their unity a silent promise. They remembered their families, their teachers, and all the people back home waiting for them to prove that their voices mattered. In that moment, they knew they were not just representing themselves, but an entire nation's dreams and hopes. The opening speaker from the rival team delivered their points with flawless, polished English. The crowd nodded, impressed by the smooth delivery. Then it was Miguel's turn. As he spoke, a few snickers echoed from the back row, triggered by the sound of his accent. Miguel paused, just for a second. He saw the judges shift in their seats, pens hovering. The pressure was enormous. Every slip of pronunciation felt like a spotlight glaring down. "Let's hope he doesn't get lost," someone whispered. Laughter followed, but Miguel pushed on. He laid out the facts. Rising sea levels in the Philippines, the impact on fishing villages, the cost of ignoring justice for the poor. Each word was clear, his voice steady even as the laughter burned in his ears. The other teams watched, waiting for him to break, but the Filipino team stayed calm, hands folded, eyes locked on their teammate. They knew this was only the beginning, and that their strength would soon show. Now, it was Sophia's turn. She didn't rush. She spoke of her own town, where floods had destroyed homes. She described her family's struggle to rebuild, her father's hands rough from labor, her mother's quiet tears. The accent was there, but so was the pain and the hope. The audience grew quieter with every sentence. Sophia's words painted pictures more vivid than any statistic. She argued that economic growth meant nothing if families like hers kept losing everything. Her voice trembled once, but she did not stop. She looked into the eyes of the judges and told them, "This is not just a debate, this is our life." Arnold followed. Instead of hiding his accent, he embraced it. He told the story of a classmate who had to drop out because his family's crops failed after a typhoon. "We don't just read about climate change," Arnold said, "we live it." By the time Arnell finished, the room was silent. The debate was no longer just about winning points, it was about listening and understanding. The change in the room was almost physical. Where there had been laughter, now there was stillness. Judges leaned forward, pens forgotten. Members of other teams stopped whispering and started listening. The Filipino team's stories had cracked open something deeper than language. The next speaker from the rival team tried to dismiss their arguments as emotional, but it sounded flat. The audience remembered Sophia's trembling voice, Arnell's fierce honesty. Facts mattered, but so did the truth behind them. Miguel used his rebuttal to connect the dots. If real people suffer, shouldn't real justice matter? His words hung in the air. The accent was still there, but so was the logic, the heart, the courage. One by one, the audience's eyes shifted. Respect replaced ridicule. The Filipino team had done what perfect grammar never could. They made people feel. As the open floor began, a member of the rival team tried to land one more insult. "You speak English, but do you really understand it?" he sneered. The room tensed. Everyone waited for the Filipino team's reply. Arnell smiled gently, refusing to be rattled. "We may not sound like you," he said, "but we understand what matters. Maybe that's why you're listening now." Some in the crowd laughed, but this time, it was laughter of respect. Even the judges smiled. Sophia added, "Our accents tell our story. They remind us where we come from and who we fight for." Miguel finished. "In the end, it's not how you say it, it's what you choose to say, and why." The applause started slowly, then grew. The mockery had turned to admiration. The Filipino team had not just defended themselves, they had transformed the stage. When the judges announced the winner, the room erupted. The Filipino team stood together, not just as champions but as symbols of hope. They had faced prejudice, but they had not let it define them. Their victory was more than a trophy. It was a message to everyone who's ever been mocked for their accent or background. After the debate, people lined up to shake their hands. Some apologized for laughing, others thanked them for opening their eyes. News spread quickly back home. Filipinos everywhere felt pride swell in their chests. For once, it wasn't about perfect English, it was about powerful voices. True leadership, the team realized, is not about never being doubted. It's about standing tall when you are. Their voices, shaped by their homeland, had become a beacon for everyone who dreams of speaking up and being heard. In the end, they showed the world. It's not the accent that matters. It's the courage to speak, the heart to listen, and the pride to stand tall, no matter how the world tries to keep you small.